Welcome to another episode of the Smiles Ahead podcast. Today, we're going to go over the popular topic of Invisalign or aligners versus braces. I know we've been through this a few times in different types of podcasts, but we get this question almost every day when people are coming in and just want to know the difference, what's going to be best for them, can they do Invisalign, should they do braces? So we're going to clear that up here a little bit. Again, always at the first 60 seconds, we're going to try to give you some answers. And if you want to join us, we'll go another about 8 to 10 minutes and really deep dive into what's going on there. So the truth of the matter is, if the case is the same, meaning that it's going to be the same difficulty with braces and with aligners, and why I say that is sometimes it's better to use aligners, sometimes it's better to use braces. So your doctor will tell you that. But if everything's the same, it really comes down to lifestyle and compliance. If you're someone who feels like taking a tray in and out multiple times a day, every time you eat, and remember to put it back in, it's going to be very difficult for you, then aligners are not for you. If you feel like, having something on your teeth that is going to catch stuff, you just don't like the look of it, you're a compliant person, you just don't want to mess with having to come to the office every 8 weeks, then aligners might be for you and braces not. So it comes down to lifestyle and compliance. We'll put it that way. If you feel like you can wear those aligners and you don't want the braces, go with Invisalign. If you know and you know that you won't wear your aligners and they'll be in your pocket or your gym bag the whole time, go ahead and go with braces. So that's the long story short of it. Now we can dig in a little bit about it. Like what I first like to talk about is the different types. So you have braces, but it's not just one style of braces. You're going to have your clear braces that a lot of adults and some kids like. That's going to be very much like aligners, but they give you the braces effect. So they're not very noticeable, but they're on all the time and they're working. You're going to have your more traditional bracket that's going to be fun. You're going to be able to put colors on them, change those every time you come in. They're a little bit thinner on profile. So some people say that comfort's a little bit higher than the clear brackets. We even have some gold brackets and different types of colors and ceramics and things of that nature. So there are different looks. They all do the same. They all work the same, but they just have different looks. With aligners, you have different companies. So in our office, we offer Invisalign and 3M Clarity aligners, and your doctor will tell you which one's going to be best for this case versus that case. But ultimately, it comes to your decision on what you feel like you're going to want. So let the doctor, the practitioner, walk you through the pros and cons of each, but know there are different types of aligners. We will say Invisalign throughout this podcast just because that's how people know it. It's almost like the Kleenex. But no, there are different types. So if a doctor does recommend a different type for a very good reason, that might be something to listen to. And just know that they need to be very straightforward on what you're getting and why. So let's get into it. Pros and cons. Let's start with braces. So the pros are they're very good for complex cases. And what I mean by complex is you might have a very high impacted tooth where you're going to have a surgery to go up and get a button on that tooth and pull it down to the bracket. With the aligners, you can do it in different ways, but it comes very difficult and can take a little bit longer. With braces, we can have that wire in there that holds the other teeth while you pull those teeth against it. So impacted teeth, typically canines, they get stuck up in the mouth. Braces can be a much better way to do that and a very good pro to get braces. Another thing is no compliance. Like we talked about before, we put the braces on, we change the wires, we change the elastics. You come in every 8 weeks, we tell you what's going on. It's pretty much no-brainer. Unless you're wearing rubber bands to fix the bite, and as long as you're keeping them clean, we do all the work, they're going to work. And then, the various types, like we talked about, there's many types of braces, so whatever look you're going for, you can probably get. The cons that we hear from braces are the aesthetics. So some people, especially adults that come in and they just don't want a big mouthful of metal, as they call it, even though we do have the clear bracket, or they just don't want to deal with someone, even with the clear brackets, maybe they're staining or whatever the case may be, and they just want something that maximizes the aesthetics for them. There's also the potential for a little bit more discomfort What we found is it's pretty similar. So we poll most of our patients, and shockingly, Invisalign and braces in terms of comfort-wise are very similar. You might have a few more emergencies with braces just because something could come loose and start poking, versus aligners, that's not going to happen. But if everything goes smooth and as it should, your body and mouth gets pretty used to it. So at the beginning, regardless if you're wearing Invisalign or braces, you're going to be going, moving your lips around, trying to get used to something new in your mouth. But once you're used to that, a couple days in, regardless if it's braces or Invisalign, it's pretty much going to be the same. So we do say comfort in those small instances where maybe a wire starts to get poking, or, if you're really prone to ulcers and a bracket's rubbing against the ulcer, those can be some of the things to look out for. Another con with braces that people mention is the oral hygiene aspect. So it is a little bit more complicated because you do have the bracket, more surface area for food, plaque, and things to get stuck to, essentially. And when they get stuck to the bracket, then they're on the tooth, and that's what can cause decalcification and other issues. But as long as you're cleaning them like we tell you and you're flossing up under the wire, then there is no big difference. Sometimes it's just a little bit of a higher barrier to entry. So that could be something to think about. Now with Invisalign and aligners, the obvious pro here is they should be less noticeable. Some people do mention once they get them that they're more noticeable than they thought. I guess it's the eye of the beholder, but in general, we all know that they're going to be less noticeable than the braces. I would like to mention here, when you do get Invisalign, it's not just trays. You do get little attachments on the teeth that we place. What these attachments do is they kind of act like the bracket. So if you think of when you have braces, you put a bracket on and then a wire. With Invisalign, you put a attachment on and then snap the plastic over that, and that tells the tooth how to move in an efficient way. If you don't put these on, it's much harder to get the movements that create great results. So people always ask, are they necessary? They're not necessary, but they're necessary for a good result. So they probably will be used in your case. They're not very noticeable, but you can feel them, especially when the aligners are out. And they are something extra that goes on your teeth. So that is something that also surprises people. But yeah, the pros, big time, they're clear, they're less noticeable. Also, removable. So if you're going to a dinner party, or if you're wanting to clean your teeth really well, basically you can pop those out and stop treatment whenever you want to. Now that can also be a con, which we'll get to. But yeah, when you're eating, drinking something other than water, you pop them out. Go as life is normal. Make sure you get those things back in. And then we need you to wear them at least 20 hours a day. So the range is 18 to 22. So if you're in that 20-hour slot, you're good. That gives you 4 hours to eat meals. If you need to go out socially for a little bit and don't feel comfortable having them in, maybe you have a big meeting, pop them out for a little bit. You just have to remember to get them in. So that goes to the cons of Invisalign. A lot of people think, it's going to be super easy to wear them. It's going to be no problem. And then they realize every time they want to grab a handful of nuts or maybe a bite of popcorn or a snack, got to pop your aligners out, have that snack. At least rinse your mouth out. You don't have to brush every single time. Rinse your mouth out and then get those aligners back in there. What we do see happen sometimes is people will put them in their pockets. They'll put them in napkins, throw them away. They'll end up in the gym bag in different places other than the mouth. And obviously, this is what can slow up treatment when it comes to Invisalign. So compliance is the big one. And then the other con is just sometimes they're not great for cases. Like we talked about, the more complicated, the impactions. If you're having a surgical procedure with it, maybe you're moving the jaw, fixing the bite, and moving the teeth. Invisalign is not going to be so good for that and cause you a little bit more trouble than it does good. Another thing that I wanted to do, instead of me just going through what I think the pros and cons are, is to look up basically the biggest questions asked on the internet. And so typically those relate to what our patients want to hear and what they ask when they come into the office when it comes to braces versus Invisalign. So the first one is age and lifestyle. And we've hit on that a little bit, but I would say that our practice is about 50% adults And within that 50%, more than 50% end up going with braces. So every adult thinks they come in and they need Invisalign and this is going to be the best thing for them. And then we talk about lifestyle. Hey, you're going to have to take these in and out. Every time you have to have a snack, you're going to have to, wash your mouth out, put them back in. If you're not wearing them, the teeth aren't going to move. Or we could put on this nice clear bracket and, kind of control it where you don't have to think about compliance. And that's about, the majority are going to go with the braces, but it's still about a 40-60 split there. So that's just kind of where it goes with age and lifestyle. Oral hygiene and maintenance, another thing that we had touched on, but with braces, it's going to be a little bit more complicated because you are going to have to get up under that bracket, under that wire. With Invisalign or aligners, you're just going to pop those trays out and brush and floss as normal. People end up brushing more with Invisalign than they did, prior to it, just because if they're eating something, they don't want to put the tray in if they've been eating something sticky or something like that. So oral hygiene and maintenance, probably give that to Invisalign. That's a little bit better with the hygiene, but the maintenance, can go either way. Cost and insurance. So this is always a big one with braces versus Invisalign. The good thing is that most practices, including ours at BWC Orthodontics, the price of braces and Invisalign are very, very similar. So, even though there is a big lab fee for aligners, we've made it where we can get that down. With insurances, there are a few insurances that are negotiated rates, that negotiated rate just covers braces. And you can get aligners, but there is an upcharge. So sometimes people will do research on their insurance and say, oh, I'm only this much out of pocket. And then they come in and they're surprised because they want Invisalign really bad, but there is an upcharge. The great thing with that is negotiated rates and that type of insurance, you always get very good benefits. So regardless, your patient responsibility for aligners is typically very low, but that can be an issue. So it's not necessarily the orthodontic office that is changing the price, but the insurance can also affect that. So that's something that you want to talk to whatever office you go to, whatever provider you go to, and make sure that's going to be the best decision for you. Treatment duration. This is another big one. We want to know how much does it cost? How long is it going to take? The way that a tooth moves is an osteoclast and osteoblast. These are the two cells that come in and resorb the bone and then lay the bone back down when there's a pressure put on a tooth. Now, this pressure is very specific because it can't be too heavy or it goes slower. It can't be too light because it goes slower. It needs to be right in the middle. Essentially, what I'm trying to say here is no matter what device you're using to move a tooth, as long as it's in that slot, the tooth is going to move about 1 millimeter a month. So if you're wearing your aligners and your Invisalign well, it's going to go just as quick as the braces. If you're wearing the braces and you're popping off brackets and you have bad hygiene versus somebody that's wearing their aligners really well, that's going to be quicker. So as long as you are taking care of whichever appliance you use, it is more a biological response on how fast those teeth move. It's not the actual appliance. So in theory, it should be the same amount of time. I will mention that if someone is on a big deadline, so say they have a wedding in exactly 14 months and they're like, this has to come off before. You could, or say they're moving. Weddings we can take care of in different ways because we'd always take the appliance off and put them back on if we need to. But say they're moving. Say they're moving out of the country. There's no way they can come back. They need to be done in 14 months. Good thing about braces is we can do the records. Doctor can diagnose with you right there, talk to you about treatment, get the braces on that day. The teeth start moving that day. With the liners, you do the scan and some work in the background has to be done. So you have to do some stuff on the computer. The aligners have to be fabricated. So even if it's just a couple of weeks, you get a little bit of a head start with braces. So everything being the same, you're going to win by, maybe that 4 to 6 weeks, which could be very vital depending on that timeline. Now, like I said, there's always things to be done. So if you really prefer the aligners, then we can make sure you're within that timeline. Especially if you're not moving out of the country, like we mentioned, as drastic as that is. But that is something to think about. If you're like, hey, this space has been driving me crazy, I want it closed as soon as possible, you can get the braces on that day. Teeth are moving that day. So in terms of timing, let's just go back over that. It's more of a biological thing, not an appliance thing. If you're wearing the appliance like you should, then those teeth should move about 1 millimeter a month at the same rate. And that's how it is with duration. Some real life examples. I do like to mention this as we wrap up. I know I've gone a little bit of extra time on this, but it is a big topic. People are asking a lot of questions about it, so we need to know. But we give the option in our practice. So say you start with aligners and you hate them, and you're like, I can't wear them. They're in my pocket all the time. I throw them away. They're driving me crazy. Then no questions asked. We can switch you back to braces, and then you're just off going. If you're in braces, same thing. They're driving you crazy. They're driving you nuts. You're getting ulcers. You're getting wire pokes. Just was not what you were expecting. You can switch to aligners, no questions asked. We thought when we started this process, now a lot of offices will charge you like $1,000 changing fee, this and that, depending on what membership level you get. At our office, we like to take all that out and say, hey, we're going to do what's best for you. We don't want to lock you in on the decision. When we did this, we thought a lot of people would switch from braces to Invisalign or aligners. What we found is about 90% that switch. Now, I will say only about 2% switch because, like I was saying, once you get used to something, it's what you're used to and you're fine with it. So if you can get through those first 2 weeks, typically whatever you have is going to be best, and that's going to help your duration of time. If you change in the middle, then it is going to make that treatment go a little bit longer. But yeah, so 9 out of 10 times, the person that's switching goes from aligners to braces because the aligners are driving them crazy versus braces to aligners. So that's our real life study of one in our office. Don't let that affect what you're going to do. Make sure that that's good. But in this case, come on in, talk to us, see what's going to be best for you, and we will get you in Invisalign or braces and get that smile right. Well, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week on the Smiles Ahead podcast. Thanks for listening to the Smiles Ahead podcast, powered by Burrow, Welchel, and Culp Orthodontics. Be sure to leave a rating, hit that subscribe button, and if you have more questions, you can reach out to me directly at sam@bwcortho.com. That's sam@bwcortho.com. You can also visit our website, bwcortho.com, and we will be happy to answer any questions you might have.